That passes 6-0. Note for the record that Ms. Feather is absent. Discussion and/or vote to approve the fiscal year 27 school budget amendments. Dr. Thornton?
I can start if you want, Madam Chair. So just to recap, in front of you at your places, you have the current budget draft up to date. You also, in your drive today, got a cover letter I did for the budget. I'm not going to read it to you, just to kind of summarize once again for the folks at home. For the first time, we're not using fund balance for this budget. That's a challenge, making up around 1.9. The medical's up 770. That's a challenge. And of course, the 3.4 million for the raise and all of the associated costs. To offset all that, the budget has built in state aid of 2.1, the 2 million from the town ask, and the 1.3 in reductions we're going to talk about, right? As far as how that might play out. I know a lot of you. Actually, one more thing before I go on. In my letter, I did mention too how the 4% ask may exceed the town cap, right? So that's just food for thought as far as we have to measure for us what's the likelihood of us getting that, and are we doing one budget activity now in March, and are we doing something else again in June? We don't know yet. We have to see, right? Wait and see. But that's something I have on my mind as far as what's the town effort going to be, right? So I know. So yesterday, last couple of days, and last night, we got some questions from the committee members. We tried to organize them. We have one in an Excel document with questions and answers. We can go through the ones you want to go through. And last night, Mr. Bacon gave us one, and more like a staffing one, and we tried to also tackle that one through a couple of slides. So if you want, I can have Tim start and kind of just reset the table with a couple of slides, and we can go into your questions, if that helps.
Please.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I just wanted to rehash some slides that we brought up under the RIDECast presentation this December. I wanted to reiterate the data that was in it because I think it's very powerful to understand where Cumberland stands in relationship to the state averages. So you've seen this before, but I just really want that 35 million number, right? So we're the lowest per pupil expenditure in the state. In order to get to the state average of $24 million, that would mean we would need an additional $35 million, right? So when we look at places to cut and we look at areas, being the lowest funded in the state, we're already very lean. So other districts are dealing with $35 million more than what we have.
Well, speaking of other districts, one more thing. I do call it as far as the landscape. I know you're looking at this budget thinking, is it just us? The answer is no. We have neighbors around us, some wrestling with a $5 million problem, some a $10 million problem, some a $16 million problem. Some districts can't even, they don't have a balanced budget. They have a commission in town. So we are not alone. I only know of a couple districts that aren't really looking at significant challenges. So just I wanted to add that.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to talk about the quadrant of success, right? So the area you want to be in, efficient outcomes, high-performing districts with low cost, that's ourselves, Cumberland, Barrington, East Greenwich. I don't know if you have any other comments on that, but I just wanted to reiterate that just to kind of set the stage for where Cumberland is budget-wise.
So I know we have, what's your pleasure, Madam Chair? We built an Excel spreadsheet. We can start on that if you
Great.
want, and we'll call that up. We won't go through every line of all the
Yep.
questions. But if you see the ones you want, we'll just kind of scroll from top to bottom, and you stop us when you want us to elaborate, whether it's Mike or myself or Tim or Bonnie or Beth.
And these are questions submitted by committee members
Yes.
prior to the meeting.
Yes.
And then we'll get into questions from committee members during the meeting.
And also, Mr. Bacon had some last night we want to touch upon, too.
Okay, perfect, excellent.
These were kind of broken out while Tim's doing that. I can vamp. These are broken out into, I think, technology was a category, state aid was a category, the other big ones. Those are the big two. You can see number one there. We're talking about just object codes. Are there any questions on those first items, 1 through 9, if you can read those? There's some talk of ASOP versus Aspen. There was some questions on alternate platforms. I don't know if those answers were what you were looking for. If you want to have us expand on that?
I do have a question. Number 8, the contract, if it expires, you said that it's a yearly renewal, which expires in June 30th of 26. Is that a possibility that we can look at a different vendor that would be able to provide the same?
Oh, yeah, Mike Chandler.
I think you might be a year out on that, just because of the fact that it's not just doing, absences for teachers. It also has the evaluation system that's approved by RIDE. So we need to look at not just replacing it for that, if that was something that was to be looked at, but to be able to, take up both systems.
All right, thank you.
We could scroll down a little bit, Tim, just a couple. Okay, stop right there. So, internet connectivity, tech costs, E-rate, anything there? Scrolling a little further. We have reimbursements, E-rate again.
Can you explain E-rate? Oh, sorry.
It's going to get extra airtime tonight, I think. E-rate is, it's a program that's put in place by the federal government. So it has to do with internet connectivity to students in schools. So inside of that, you have Category 1 and Category 2. Basically, Category 1 gives us the internet connection, and Category 2 gives you any managed services that go along with it, as well as some switching, things like that. Anything that has to do with network connection. So we typically qualify for 40 to 50% based on free and reduced lunch. So it fluctuates a couple percent every year. We've been using it since I started here, 17, 18 years ago. We capitalized on that for any of the equipment that was also purchased during the bonds for all the buildings. So that's how we've been able to pay for it. So
Mike, what's the limiting factor on getting E-rate?
our limiting factor is just funding.
Can you explain that?
So 40 to 50%, we're responsible for the other side of it. So there are going to be some changes coming forward over the next couple of years where if you are taking E-rate funding, any of the funding that you've used in the past, because it gets broken through for general internet, we're going to be responsible to make sure that any of the network switches have to meet a certain criteria now, where before you could kind of get through it, they want to make sure security-wise and things like that are going to be covered.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
How are we and where are we with that security coverage right now?
We're plugging along with our replacements. So as we've been doing the building construction, we've been doing the replacements in those cycles.
Scroll along a little more, Tim. Okay, tech hardware was a big one. Replacement cycle. Then we have facilities. Mike has something.
So in the replacement cycle, we've had them in the past. The problem is there's competing factors of what you want to do with it. We've had it for a number of years, but we've had to use some funding from technology to balance the budget. So there are a number of devices that are a problem. Some of the things with Chromebooks over the next couple of years, especially in the elementary school, because typically as they get replaced in 10th grade, they go to the seniors, then they get rolled back down to the Ls. Last 2 years, we haven't been able to do that. So we're going to be coming up on a crunch in the next year and a half into the second budget cycle, where you're going to be looking at replacing around 1,000 devices. So it's going to be pretty costly, and that's anything that's used for standardized testing, regular applications that are used for testing throughout the year. So that's going to potentially be an issue because the devices can only get updated for so long. Once they go out of the side of that updated cycle, applications won't run on it, it won't get updates, and it's just the trickle-down effect of where we are. And the same thing with some of our labs. They're outside of the range of it. We have a couple servers that are outside that range. So there needs to be some influx of funding for technology for hardware, rolling into those years. So,
Can you talk briefly about technology costs and where they're going right now?
so really interesting one. We had a server budgeted for this year. Typically, they're around $12,000 to $15,000. We just got multiple prices on one. It's 75,000 because of all the data centers that they're building. So all of the memory and everything that's going into those right now are just driving up costs. So we're obviously not going to, pursue something like that until we can get there. So this other means that we're, trying to extend as much as we possibly can, but it is a problem where some of that stuff lays.
Thank you. Questions from the committee?
I did
have a question. Ms. Shea, then Ms.
No,
Smith.
she can go.
Ms. Smith, then Ms. Shea.
So just a question on the technology, because it is used for the standardized testing and things, and so it's a requirement with the state, of course. So what can we do? What has to happen here to talk to the state? Because we're not getting funding specifically for technology from the state, correct?
Oh, no.
Okay, and what would happen if we didn't do our standardized testing on the computers?
As far as I'm aware, outside of some of the accommodations that you can do with it, that'd have to be something else we'd have to explore.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this very clearly, that all of these updates or replacements are done entirely together, or are they done like within cycles, you said, right?
So they used to be done in cycles.
Okay.
But the last couple of years, we've had to kick the can down because of the budget.
Yep.
So we're outside of our cycle at this point.
Okay. And there's no way that we would be able to kind of, coming from somebody that doesn't really have a tech background, say do like an update for grades 11 and 12 first, and then do an update for, 9 and 10, and then move on to the middle schools, and then move on to elementary? Is that like, am I not connecting the dots correctly?
Yeah, so typically what we would do is do a grade 10 rollout. When COVID happened and the elementary schools received them, because at one point we were 6 through 12, and then we became 3 through 12. The last couple budgets, anybody coming into the district would get a device if they were in any of those grades. The last couple years now, we've kicked it where third grade we did away with, so fourth got it, so we didn't have that 2 years at once to be able to do it. And then where those cycles came, because we're replacing it in the fifth year going into the sixth year, that would bring us out to the seniors, which would then get rolled backwards to the elementary level. So because we're a couple cycles out now, you have to play catch up. So when you're looking at prices of Chromebooks at this point, the last price I just got maybe a day and a half ago, just because everything's high right now, so we're hoping that it's going to come down, but it's $125 more per device. So when you're looking at a typical budget of $125,000, you got to add, for the 330 kids, an additional $125. It's crazy right now.
One more, Mike. Can you explain depreciation in Chromebooks and budgeting?
Yeah, well, I mean, anything in general with technology is 3 to 5 years. It's kind of a rule of thumb depending on what it is. Typically, we're 8 to 12 year, 8 to 13 year. So.
Sorry, not to cut you off, Dr. Thornton. I heard that there was a little bit of a tech rumor when it came to MacBooks, and that they were potentially trying to almost compete with Chromebooks. In the event that that went live, do you think that that would be a better opportunity for us when it comes to negotiations?
With the MacBook, you're probably referring to the new Neo. It's still in the $500 range. So we would have to look at a new infrastructure to be able to manage them and things like that. So there would be additional costs, but you're still a couple $100 more than what we're paying for Chromebooks.
Right. When it comes to like the fourth graders, do you think that they're significantly using them compared to previous years, or do you think that there's a possibility that we could stray away from them temporarily?
Well, they all have them in their classroom right now. So every classroom, 1 through 4, has enough devices for the number of students that are in there of what we've been able to roll back through the years. And with the one-to-one going away, the take-home one-to-one, that went away this year in fourth grade, so that's what we ended up doing with those. And then in the budget for next year, it's just the carts to do the same thing into fifth grade. So that takes 1 grade level out that we won't have to purchase one-to-one for.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Beacon?
Mike, if you could just reiterate that again for me. So in the elementary school, 4th and 5th grade, each student has their individual own device.
Fifth grade right now is one-to-one. Fourth grade is one-to-one in the classroom.
That's right.
They do not take them home. They're not a take-home device. So the year before that was third grade, and going into next year will be fifth grade with students don't take them home.
Is there anything stopping us from elementary school, as when I was in middle school, where there was media rooms and the entire school shared the computers? Elementary school can have a media room that shares the computers across the board.
At this point, you don't need them, but when they're doing testing in classrooms, you're not going to do that in a media room. You're not going to be able to schedule it. There's also space issues in those rooms. Middle schools, we do have them because those are built into their tech labs, but they do have one-to-one with that.
States require them to all be digital,
A lot of the curriculum is digital. A lot of the work that they do is digital.
so then we should get funding for it if it's a requirement, correct? I'm asking a question.
That'd be great.
It's aspirational.
Next category, if I could, we have,
I think Ms. Smith.
Oh.
No, actually.
Oh.
Okay.
Mr. Chandler did say exactly what I was hoping he would say
Okay.
to
Okay.
respond.
Perfect.
we
Okay.
have supplies and materials. You can scroll up a little bit, Tim. See, we have down, so curriculum's on here, talking about just-in-time inventory, purchasing, how much do we buy, that type of thing. Any questions on that?
I do have a question about the facilities with the objects. 54,601, 54,602, 54,604, the rentals. Ice time for athletics, obviously, I'm assuming that we still go through Mount, is that correct?
Actually, it's not Mount St. Charles, but I don't recall the location.
146?
146?
146, they
Lynch?
should, Lincoln has, yeah, no, Lynch is Pawtucket, it's,
146.
146.
yeah, I think it does, Lincoln's there as well.
Is there a possibility that we can actually look at the Attleboro location? Would that be an opportunity, or is that kind of crossing state lines and not an opportunity?
That came up a while ago with some parents I know, and I don't recall the reason, if it was cost prohibitive or just logistically difficult, but I can re-ask that question to the AD. It came up around 2 months ago.
Also, the postage machine, I know this is very old school. Is there a possibility that we can transition to any other options when it comes to postage?
Some things have to be mailed. I'll go to Mr. Rezek on that. Mr. Rezek, what do you mail sometimes?
For the postage machines, checks are mailed, live checks are mailed, especially to substitutes. We use it for informational purposes. We send letters out to every part-time staff. It's a guarantee of position next year so that they don't apply for unemployment over the summer. The superintendent's office sends out mailings for different things, and business office uses it quite a bit to mail out the checks that they process and any other information collecting on Blue Cross Blue Shield for retirees and different things like that. So we don't use it a ton, but we do use it enough to make it worth our while because we pay less postage using the machine than with stamps.
Got it, thank you, I appreciate it. And not to kind of be a question hog, but I also wanted to ask about the graduation rentals and what that consists of.
Yeah, my memory serves, that's chair rental, it's staging, and sound, I believe.
Got it. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Mr. Bacon?
54204 is snowplow service. 56220, snow ice removal. Why is it two separate line items?
That's a UCOA rule, so the snow plowing services is the contractor we use, and then the other is the material, so like salt, sand, and things like that. So, ride dictated.
Okay, scroll up a little bit, Tim, if you could. And it's stuck. Okay. Now we're on just, no question was asked, in terms of the town aid, it's essentially 515K, give or take, a percent. So if we get
So-
1% from the town, 515, 2, et cetera, right?
So,
that
right now, we're asking the town for
north of 2 million.
2 million.
And
If they,
change. Yep.
if it's, and what I read in your letter was asking them for the 4% might require them to go to the General Assembly to get over the cap.
It may exceed the
I
cap.
think they did that in another town.
Only if our 4% exceeds the total 3% or whatever it is that the town.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, but so let's say the town says 3% over the 2 million, it's the 515, it's the 2 million minus the 515.
Right.
And then from there, 2% is 2 million minus 1/3, 1 million.
Right, so let's
basically.
say in late May, early June, we find out we're getting 3%, maybe we're cutting 515, but other variables still have to come in, like electricity is still a wild card out there. The state aid's a wild card in a good way, maybe, right? Housing aid may go the wrong way for the state. I don't know if I told you that already. If I did, forgive me. So 515 wouldn't be a terrible outcome. I mean, obviously, we don't want to cut anything, but it could be, as low as 515 for 3%.
Ms. Smith?
Dr. Thornton or Mr. McGrath, could you remind us the percentage that we received from the town last year?
I want to say it was 2%, but I have to double check. I have to go back.
I feel normally it is around that. Ms. Smith, you'll know better than I will.
So I think several years ago, I think we went in at 2.2 and we ended up settling in the ones. But I didn't think we were at 2. I thought we were just below 2, but it could be right around that. That's why I was trying to gauge that number because I'm.
Yeah, so the 26 budget, we had an $820,000 ad, so it was a 2%.
Thank you.
But historically, it's been around that 2% in your recollection?
Well, historically, up until last year, we didn't go in asking for more than what we really needed, so we were down below in the number, which made it a little bit easier to work with. But we made it clear even several years back, we've been talking about this, that we were going to come into this crunch. So we knew last year, and when we didn't get the whole thing last year, we knew that we were going to have to deal with an issue this year.
Thank you. And Mr. Bacon?
If my memory is correct, I thought in multiple meetings that we had, the mayor said we were going to get $0.
In our joint meeting back in January, yeah, he had forecast, I think he was worried it would be a 0. But I think it's early. I don't think we know our number yet. Usually we get a good indication in April. So we don't know what the number is yet.
And you're asking for the 2%,
We're asking for the maximum, the 4.
which would then cause him, we'd have to go back to the town to ask for more money, which would then be another tax increase to
It's all,
achieve that 4%.
all theoretical, but yes. And just to reiterate, asking for the maximum, which is challenging, we're still cutting 1.3, asking for the max. That's the challenge. And the biggest thing is fund balance not being there is the big difference.
So do we have a model for worst case if he responds with goose egg?
What I'll do is, as we get into the spring and evolve more and get like high school sections firmed up, things like that, I'll give you a list in reverse order, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, just my take on what you could pick from. I did it last year in June. I think we had up to like, I don't know what it was, 800K maybe, give or take. So you'll have that. It's early yet. I want to get through this submission first, then we'll kind of go from there. You'll have it, yeah. On my list, I think okay.
Ms. Smith, then, sorry.
Dr. Thornton, and again, Mr. McGrath, what was our student growth number for the past year? And maybe Mr. Giovanna is aware, knows that number. What was the total number of growth in our students
In terms of enrollment, or?
in terms of enrollment? Do you recall what that number was? Right now, we're looking at 33?
October to now, 33.
And what's our enrollment looking like for kindergarten so far, coming in for next year?
It's coming in average. It always trickles in. Last week we had 150 in. That's normal this time of year. It comes in all spring, all summer. But we've been doing well in the early grades in the last couple of years, so if that continues.
So a flat number from the town or a 0 puts us in a really bad shape when we're already the lowest per pupil spending.
Yeah.
If we're not going to see any increases, but yet we're getting increases in students.
Right, a flat from the town would cause us to cut $2 million, give or
Right.
take. Could be less, could be.
And that impacts our growth.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I mentioned already about state aid, we've talked about it, so I did call some folks on Friday, we spoke to RIDE today even, and there is some discussions of maybe the formula being tweaked with the poverty indicator, that kind of thing, so we're gonna wait and see. Also, I mentioned housing aid, that's still a TBD. Next question I wanna touch on, a team was formed a while ago with Allen Foundation on school funding, and they came out with a concept to invest more in schools. And the question was asked, has that gotten traction? The answer is no traction whatsoever. I talked to the president, she's on it, Ms. Massey out of Cranston, so they have not gotten any traction on that. Early retirement came up, and I gave you the answer. I can just kind of paraphrase that. We did do it years ago. We had around 20 people, and back then we kind of forecast how many people is it worth to get the early retirement package. You get a step 10 leaving, hire a step 2, step 3. We offered back then 2 years of single medical or $10,000, and we got over 20 people to take it, so it was worth it. Right now, we only have 5 or 6 retirees in the system. Tim also pointed out, with medical being volatile right now, if you do that kind of package, it can also create like a drag on your medical, because you're now retaining some folks who've been in the system. That's always a risk you take. But it's still something to look at. Right now, only 4 or 5 people. And Mr. Resnick, how many folks are retirement eligible?
We only have information based on age alone, so I pulled all of our employees, full-time employees, 65 or older. We have 29 people at 65 or older. That does not mean that they are ERSRI eligible. Some people start later in their career and haven't reached the same number of years. We don't have access to that information, especially if they worked in another district. So 29 people at age 65 or older. Of that, maybe half might be ERSRI eligible.
Ms. Smith?
Those are all teaching positions?
Full-time positions, so either teaching from the ICSI union or G6 positions.
Thank you.
Tim, scroll down a little bit if you could. I know we had a question on the high school staffing, maybe inefficiency in reducing FTEs. The deans are already 10-month employees, they're CTA members, right? The high school, I know some folks may think when school's done, it's over, but that's just, it's the next season. It's scheduling, it's hiring, interviewing. Like we had Beth here from the middle. It doesn't stop over the summer, so we didn't really see a situation where we could recommend that. And also, they are currently, as you know, on contracts. Next one, if you could, Tim. Is that it? Oh, so the next category, we made some slides. Mr. Bacon last night gave us some slides from a website to kind of illustrate town growth, enrollment versus staffing, that kind of thing. And he's posed the question. So I'm going to let Tim start. We got some slides. We'll kind of let Tim riff through these, and we'll go to Mr. Bacon.
I can zoom in a little bit on these as we kind of go, but what this is right from RIDE, some data analysis comparing Rhode Island over here to Cumberland. And this has some nice kind of data on staffing resources for each level, right? So I'll zoom in a little bit more. So as we look at it, we compare like district administrators in Rhode Island, and then this column right here is kind of administrators per student, right? So the average in Rhode Island district administrators per student, 595. Here in Cumberland, 1,200. So basically, we're double the caseload for the district administrators compared to Rhode Island average. We can just keep running down this. So building administrators, 231, 344 for Cumberland. Support professionals, 80, 300, and I think it says 95 for Cumberland. And then per student per teacher, 12 in the state, 13 in Cumberland here. So as you can see, right from the state data, you can see that we're basically having the state averages for those different categories. I don't know if you have anything else on those. And then there's some other stuff on here, kind of looking at the outcomes. This is 23-24 data, so the RIDE's kind of a little bit behind on it. But it also talks about kind of where we stand on object codes. Cumberland's all below on all those different categories. We spoke to Mario Carino today, and kind of we're talking about core expenditures comparing to the state. They want to see a mix of 80-20 is kind of what you would spend on your core versus your.
What's core?
Sorry, so that's like actually in school instruction, right at the teaching level. Traditionally, school systems are in the 80-20 range, but you're starting to see that really slide. Actually, I think that was down here. Yeah, so core instruction, as you can see, since 2018. So this is the state averages, right, have fallen, right? So now 23-24, it's 76-24 for the state. Cumberland falls right at 80-20, so we're right kind of where that benchmark standard is. This slide was talking about, the mix of district expenditures per job classification of the total. So, right, we actually, out of the entire state, spend the most on our teachers as opposed to the other pieces as percentage of our total budget. So, the majority of our budget's going into the teaching instructional staff, based on this data. And then, so this was another thing that Mr. Carino shared with us. I don't know why that's, he said that this has some pretty good data on it. I don't know why this is doing that. This kind of compared, this is the state to Cumberland. So since 1819, we're up 33 employees compared to the state, up 276. But the state average is down 7,000 students, and if this would stop jumping around, it shows that we're up 26 students. I don't know why it's doing that. And then you can kind of see, if it would stop doing that, that we haven't in that time period, we haven't added any non-teaching district. It's all been teachers and paraprofessionals.
Also, I would say, whenever you see a website, when they're talking about core or admin, these terms are kind of thrown around loosely. Admin, you always think of a vice principal, the principal. We also have like interventionists, essentials teachers, not direct line in the classroom, but working with kids. Is that staff? Is that admin? Is it core? It depends on which website you're on. Also, I know we have like folks working in Tony's office, CTA members working with teachers, but is that admin in the coding, or is it core? So that's always a confusing part.
Yeah, and this was the chart that Mr. Bacon shared. So as you can see, since 2015, there has been an increase in the staffing I believe I'm not sure what it's using for data here, but the thing I found interesting, and this actually kind of shows, we're kind of the same trend with the state in terms of adding whatever employees that this is looking at, but the state has a decrease in students. We do not. So this actually proves that Cumberland is, we're increasing our staff to match with our student population.
Now, I have Tony here from Florida. I want to get Tony on the record here. Tony, so any thoughts on looking at this slide, how you reconcile that with, that kind of timeline?
Sure. So, hi everybody. Good evening. So I can't see the slide, but I'm guessing you're referring to the slide that Mr. Bacon shared with the exponential increase from.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, to note on that particular slide, the spike where you see Cumberland was from roughly 2020 to 2023, 2024. That was you got to remember that. ESSER money, we spent $6 million in ESSER funds over that period of time. And so there were a myriad of positions. I think it was 22 we counted, Bonnie. 22 jobs that were added that a lot of them were not, they were not necessarily classroom student facing teachers. Some of them were, but a lot of them were not. And so if they're categorizing, like the superintendent said, if they're categorizing those as quote-unquote administration, then it would speak to that spike, because it was a tremendous amount of position addition in our district at that time.
Tony, while I have you on the speaker, I know that another question was asked. I have it in my head. Currently, we're modeling some reductions in essentials teachers at the middles, one of each at each middle, reading and math. If they were to do that, what doesn't happen next year? What changes?
So basically, the general formula, I mean, it depends on the year, depends on what our data is, but basically, an interventionist, which is a teacher who would see students who are tier 3 or, really far behind grade level standards, typically 1.0 reading specialists can see up to 36 students. And so it's 6 periods a day, small group instruction, 6 students in each group. So it's 36 kids that aren't being seen in a respective school. When it comes to essentials, we try to keep the numbers between 15. 15 is the nice number, but 15 and 20, depending on, again, the volume of need. So any reduction in essential staff, you're talking about a net reduction of students being seen 15 to 20.
Ms. Smith, and then Mr. Bacon.
May I ask a question, Mr. Damana, on that? If you can go back and repeat that again. I thought you said that they try to concentrate in small, like six to a group?
So an interventionist, they do 6 periods a day, let's say.
Right.
And
how
so
many in each?
they would see 6 students in each period because it's intense instruction. And so that's a total of 36 students that they could see a day that would not necessarily be receiving that instruction if they are down that that person. Does that make sense?
It does, so we can take that
Okay.
36, divide it out, and then find a way to potentially up the, I know what you're saying about the intents, but if it happened, we could up the size of those 6 periods.
Depending on the need, like, there are regulations around small group instruction. You never really, 6 is the research-based number. You know, you could push it maybe to 7 or 8 if there are like needs there, but that's about the max, and it's not necessarily recommended.
Mr. Bacon?
So, the reason behind that graph and what puzzles me is that, you know, there's 4 interventionalists. Everything on here is essential that we're talking about cutting. Well, that's being projected to cut. 8 out of the 9 positions are all teaching positions, and it boggles my mind that we're talking about cutting teaching positions opposed to whatever non-teaching positions. So that's why I look at this graph, and to see a non-teaching position is much higher. Why are we not looking at models of that? Like, it boggles my mind that we're getting rid of 8 teaching positions.
I guess first thought would be, I would say for the record, one of the cuts on here, I think you guys all will agree, is not consequential. It's the one at the high school. It's a schedule change. Remember that? A clipper block was a person by
Is that
themselves
the
doing it.
FTE reduction?
Yes, so that one is like not even going to be a controversy.
So
That's
7
just
out
like
of the 9.
a function of it, right? So, but I would say going to the other slide, Tim, or we saw a slide earlier today, if it's on here, in terms of like just classic admin load, vice principal, we are on par. And as Tim pointed, we're actually double the ratio. So I'm not sure where I would go to reduce admin, if you mean classic admin. If you mean essentials or interventions, that's why, to me, I'm wondering, is that admin? You're saying, no, that's a teacher. So I think you're saying, well, why not cut admin, just pure admin? Is that the question?
I'm not, first of all, I don't want to cut anybody. I think cutting anybody is terrible, but, I mean, if, there's got to be a happy medium here, and to just cut all these teachers and all these interventionalists, like Tony just said, that's going to hurt us to cut, especially the 4 interventionalists, you know?
Well, I totally get it, and I think between, you know, Tony's team of lead teachers and the interventionist essentials people, that's kind of like our bread and butter on what makes us go, right? But on the other hand, we have, you know, a principal for a building. I need a principal for a building. So we don't have a lot of, like, I would say, jobs that other districts have that may be, you know, for example, Mike Chandler is the tech director. He's the key person. He's the door person. He's the master scheduler for the district. Because we don't have a director of guidance called the dog. They call it the dog at the high school. We don't have the dog. We have Mike. So that's, I guess, my answer. We don't have a lot of that. The other thing I would say is, if you're talking G6, you know, that classification, those are all under contract. So I really couldn't even go there now at this point.
Just want to point out, I struggle reconciling this chart because I'm not sure what it's looking at to say admin or non-staff. Over the since 1990, there's been multiple different accounting systems that the state has rolled out. And since the UCOA system came out in the mid-thousands, that's been the most robust. So, and even that is subject to job classification codes and things like that. So I'm not sure the value in some of this, because going back that far, I'm not sure that the data really is connecting. So this very well could be some of these non-instructional teaching positions, the interventionists and like that could be showing up in this data. I'm not sure. I only can speak to the stuff that we're seeing up here that was right from RIDE recently, using UCOA data that ties across the state. So that's where I kind of struggle reconciling this, because when you see charts with negative 100% on it, I'm not sure how that is valid. So that's where I struggle.
Ms. Shea, and then Ms. Smith, and then Ms. Goldstein. Okay. Okay.
I kind of jotted down a couple of questions because I just wanted to make sure I kind of dotted all my I's and crossed my T's. I'd like to kind of just better understand the roles under there, Tony's department, Mr. Damana, specifically, the academic coach positions. Are those roles student-facing? How often are they actually in the school buildings? And if at all possible, I'd like to see the data on their building presence this year. I'm also trying to understand what restructuring would realistically look like if these positions were eliminated, whether their responsibilities are either funneled down to principals or funneled up to the coordinators. Excuse me. I want to be clear, I'm not in favor of eliminating any of these positions, especially if we're talking about reducing essential programs at the middle school level. From both a parent and school committee perspective, I'm concerned about how this is going to impact our students' outcomes, particularly around academic support, state testing preparation, overall readiness for the next grade. I'm also worried about the downstream impact of staff. Redistributing these responsibilities could significantly increase workload for teachers, administrators, which could contribute possibly to a significant amount of burnout and ultimately affecting instruction. We've worked really hard as a district to kind of get our stuff back on the map. The data has showed that, the work has shown that, and we've been having great outcomes for our district, meaning wanting people to have to move to Cumberland and be a part of our success. So I'd like to just kind of see what our best options are when it comes to that type of model.
Wait, so the first question, Tony, academic coaches, right? Can you
Yeah.
put more meat on the bones for that?
I'll try to frame this as best as I can, and so that everyone sort of understands the big picture. Because we are a district, if you look at some other districts like Barrington and some of these other districts, they have very large professional development budgets, okay, which allow them to approach professional development much differently than Cumberland has had to adapt. Under our system, we have an internal dependency upon our own experts, coordinators, and coaches to provide professional development to our teachers. You have, over time, because you have transiency and movement, teachers moving from grade level to grade level, you have an influx of new teachers and hirings at different grade levels. These are all people that have never taught at that grade level or taught those students that content, okay? So coaches do two things, and coordinators. They provide the general professional development that permeates the entire district at grade level for ELA, math, science, and social studies. But the other thing that they do is they work on the pedagogy and bringing teachers up to speed on pedagogy, because when you have teachers that are coming in that have never taught our curriculum, they don't have necessarily the pedagogical understanding of our curriculum, and they need to be brought up to speed. And so another piece of that is I'll give you an example. About 10 years ago or so, we brought in SRSD, which was a writing pedagogy that really helped us make some major gains right before the pandemic in the district, right? And so we had widespread PD. Our scores were flying, doing really well. We were at 61% in ELA before the pandemic hit. Now we've had so much turnover over those past 5 years that the pedagogical understanding of teachers has been so much turnover that PD has been dilute. And so our teachers, our coaches, our curriculum coordinators are having to backfill and provide professional development and to reintegrate and constantly rehash even old initiatives that we need our current teachers that we believe are foundational practices to be able to execute in the classroom. I'll give you another example. Math coach at McCourt. We hired a math coach there because their scores were really struggling. Once we had that position put in place, they had 8% gains there. There are certain practices at the elementary level, K-5, that we have Laura taking a look at, our elementary coach, that she's really engaging in small group instruction. And if I don't know if you guys remember this, but during the RICAS presentation, I had said to you, we really feel like we have a strong 3-year plan right now where even when you diagnose a problem for a district like us, it's going to take you 3 years before you see the results. You diagnose it, you create a plan, you start to implement, and before you see teacher aptitude rise in student results, you're talking about 3 years before you see something that we diagnosed this year. So you're looking at 2029. So when you start to take away the internal elements that we rely on for our own professional development, and we don't have a professional development budget, now what are you going to do? The assistant superintendent and superintendent cannot cover 4, 5, 6 disciplines and do it well over the span of 13 grade levels. When you're talking about K to, if you include pre-K, it's even more than that, but K to 12. So we've become self-dependent with those positions, and what that would do is create a structural problem with our ability to do the things that I've just talked about.
How many times would you say, Mr. Damana, that these coaches are actually hitting, like, boots on the ground? Would you say, like,
Well,
per school year?
it depends on the work that's necessarily being done, like, so it depends, but I would say that they're hitting buildings a couple of times a week, they're working with principals, they're getting in to work with, it depends on the work that's being done and/or that I want them to do, so sometimes the work is, I need them to do 8 weeks worth of preparation, before they even step in front of a teacher, because we gotta make sure that we cover all the bases and that we are going in, armed with the appropriate information to make sure that we make the appropriate changes. So it's more complex at times than just getting into schools, but the formula is designed to be both in schools and working, at central office.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I think
No
it was
problem.
Ms. Smith, then Mr. Bacon, did you have a question? I'm sorry. Ms. Smith, Ms. Goldstein, Mr. Dean.
Just following through on that, if I could then, how many coaches do we have?
So right now you have 3. We have 1 math coach at the middle school level that primarily works out of McCourt. And then we're covered K-8 with ELA coaches. We have Laura and Jamie. Laura handles K-5, and she's focusing on small group instruction, which is where we've been struggling in ELA at the elementary level. Remember, you got 5 schools that we're working across. And then Jamie is our coach, grades 6 through 8 for ELA, and she also handles essentials.
That wasn't my question, though. I'm so sorry. I just
How
wanted to,
many?
while
We
we're
got
on
3.
the topic.
We have 3.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. So,
Also, Tony, one that's relevant before I go. How are those funded, Tony?
So 2 of them, we used to be able to fund all of them with our grants. That's how we protected those positions. Right now, I think we're able to get 2 out of the 3 in because of the reduction in federal funding that's been happening.
So if those 2 positions were cut, we would have to try to backfill into the grants without supplanting, and that's a very difficult task. So
What is supplanting?
supplanting would be something that the federal government doesn't want their funding to go towards something that they deem was already in the system. They want it to be in addition to the state and the local funding. So it's very difficult to backfill those positions with that rule that's in place. So.
Mr. Bacon, thank you, because I'm looking at the same data that you were looking at in some of those reports that were coming out, and they split it to say non-teaching staff versus teaching staff. So when they did it, and they looked at all of it, so it looked at our growth rates, it looked at everything overall, and then it looked at the non-teaching versus the teaching. And the teaching staff levels stayed pretty par to our growth rates, 4 to 8%, where and this study was done up until 2025, so I'm going to guess through the 24 school year, not this school year. And the gap on the non-teaching was significant. So this is outside of ESSER. This is a continuation of it. So, that I can see where Mr. Bacon has the same concern I have. And looking at the Rhode Island data, I appreciate that you're sharing this with us. But Mario was the very first to tell us at the RIASC meeting in April or May that we have a disparity occurring in the state where we're top-heavy. And they did say Cumberland was one of the better suited ones, so they did use us as a good example, but still talked at having it be top-heavy and that we needed to start addressing the top-heaviness outside of the teaching positions. So, and I think you may remember that, Mr. Dean, you were there for that too. So I would love to see what we can do. I don't know where the 34% increase is coming from, and I don't have all the data broken out between what non-teaching positions are and how many there are.
Right. Like I said, I don't, without knowing exactly where that data is pulled, but knowing the way UCOA pulls, and there's a severe discrepancy between what that report's showing and what this from RIDE, and this was an outside company looking at the RIDE data coming, and Mario sent me this today. So there's clearly a discrepancy between that. So I don't know what positions we've added in terms of admin and non-teacher facing. This is showing 0. So, and I can't think of stuff that has been added since I've been here that is associated with those. So I question that accuracy.
But I can say, if memory serves, Tony did a slideshow back after the post-pandemic talking about, I think we had during the pandemic upwards to like, Tony, high teens, low 20s for jobs added, and we actually kept like 10, 11 of them. And I wonder if that is the group of jobs we're talking about right now. But those were like
There were a lot of them
interventionists,
that were school
essentials.
psychologists, guidance counselors. We had deans in those jobs, so that could have caused a spike. We've always had curriculum coordinators, dating back to when you were superintendent the first time around, Doc. The MTSS coordinator, there's regulations around MTSS. It's a huge undertaking. You got MLL, they ride sanctions and MLL coordinator. And we've historically put coaches in grants. And so all of the positions that we've been able to again, internally create professional development. You remove those positions, now you've created a professional development problem. And if you're going to pay companies to come in and do that, they're going to charge anywhere $2,000-$3,000, for a couple hours, a pop, more, maybe more.
So the MLL and the other positions could be in that admin number, or psychologists and social workers could be in that admin number, even though they're not in the classroom teaching.
That's what
So
I'm-
that could be,
That's
so
what
that
I'm
could be the
thinking
spike.
admin is meant, because we did add those things. We kept, Tony, 12 of the jobs from pandemic?
I think 11, Doc.
11? 11 jobs from the pandemic.
Versus what we might consider admin as principals, assistant principals, deans, finance, HR, like stuff that maybe, so just if we had the
This
right
doesn't
direct
say,
definition.
this does not
Yeah.
say admin, it says non-teaching.
Perfect.
So,
Okay.
right, so, and that's why I wanted to make it clear. It says non-teaching versus teaching, and when you're looking at the numbers, so it doesn't say that it's just admin. And I know that we kept a lot out of ESSER, a lot more than several of us even wanted to keep. But I also know that some of those were teaching positions, and the 4 that went back to McCourt to put the teams back into place, that was critical, and we're seeing impact and the positive impact from that immediately. So, I'm voicing and echoing, I think, what everybody else or what other people are saying on the committee, and that is, these essential positions, we've got to find something else. And that's what we're trying to do, is what else can we find? Because cutting essentials hurts our most vulnerable.
Sorry.
Sorry. When it comes down to either tonight or before Thursday, this is the personnel supplement. These are all the jobs. So you just got to go through and you would just highlight what you think, because, out of this packet.
And Dr. Thornton, just to clarify, in the classroom, per the CBA, there's only can be so many students per one teacher. So we have to make sure we're following our enrollment data to do, for teaching positions,
Yeah, on
correct?
that, in your drive, you have this draft, this working copy, right? And we reduced 2 off that because we can right now, not knowing what the summer holds for us. But yes, we are complying with the contractual caps here, and that's by building, right, as of right now.
I think Ms. Goldstein had a question.
Thank you. Some of the questions that I had were asked already about what are social workers, psychologists, and essentials teachers, which are the 2 interventionists. We are considering them teaching positions. That's how we categorize them in Cumberland versus,
Yeah, I mean, they are CTA members or teachers by trade, yes.
When you dig into the UCOA job codes, the 1000 series are the instructional coaches, and then there's other series that will separate those out from instructional teachers. So my assumption is, looking at some of this data, that they're pulling those apart and using that to but at the end of the day, they're all teaching positions. They might not be the elementary instructional. There's multiple ways to look at it. And like I said, over the past 25 years and beyond, there's been different systems that categorized. And even to this day, depending on what job code gets put on the end, whether I do it one way or Cranston does it a different way, will dictate how these numbers work. So there's a lot of discrepancies in that. That is defined, but odds are pretty good that's what it's looking at, is looking at a teacher and saying, oh, that's an admin because it's not a 1,000, it's a 2,000, is probably what's happening.
Thank you. And then this data with the little teacher or figure, that is RIDE data, is correct?
So this was what Mario had sent me, and I believe what they do is they took the UCOA, that's Wanda, outside firm. I think they take the UCOA data and kind of use tools to kind of put it together, and they look at the job codes. So I recognize these job codes as the main pieces of the UCOA segments. So RIDE had suggested, hey, this is, a good resource for the data analysis.
So, thank you.
This up top,
If-
sorry. This is directly from the RIDE report card, the
Yes.
RIDE fiscal report card.
Thank you. And then if you scroll down, please.
This one?
Nope, keep going. Where are those two graphs from? Who compiled that data?
I'm not sure where it came from. It's just been circulating. It's Tableau. I'm not sure if it's an outside company that took some UCOA data. I'm not sure where it came from. Honestly. Okay.
I believe it was from a university, if I recall, but it is countrywide. It looks state by state, then town and city each. And so it drills down, and based upon some of the data, it looks like they're taking some of the larger numbers directly from, in this case, RIDE.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. But every city and town in the country uses every state has their own UCOA codes. So a lot of this stuff, and that was where UCOA came from in the first place, was to try and figure out where in the state have a better understanding of what the money was being spent on. So that's why I kind of look at the more recent data. You can kind of, whenever you see spikes like that, and Tony can speak to data better than I can. When you look at spikes like that, I question the validity of some of that stuff.
You don't know what the variables are that are when it's ill-defined. You're not really sure how they're compiling that.
Ms. Goldstein, Mr. Dean?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I know we talked about the admin increasing and the student load in Cumberland increasing, whether it's 34% or 24% increase in admin. I mean, like Mrs. Smith said, it says, people that aren't in front of students. What was the ratio of increase or decrease to the teachers or the employees that were in front of students? Do we know that information?
I believe that's this number right here, right? So since 2018, 2019 to now, we've added 21 teachers. So I think that.
Yeah. As a percentage, what do you think?
I think it's right here, 8%.
8%?
Yeah.
So they're in line with the ratio of
Yeah, because we've seen a 4% increase in students. So yeah, is that 8 or 6? Actually, I think that's 6. 6. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just a comment, I know Tony brought up earlier about the interventionist, the ratio, the student-teacher ratio. It really is important. As you know, the school committee knows painfully so. In some of the schools, the student-teacher ratio is going above the maximum that the contract allows. And if we do cut these teaching positions, that's just going to get worse. And I know the admin is important, but one of the bigger costs that's been going up, the class overage cost, I believe when we looked at it in detail, it was, I think, budgeted at $18,000 a year. Now, this coming year, it's budgeted at $80,000, and we had $72,000 in expenditures the year that we really paid attention to it. And there were associated legal fees with that, with the fact that we busted class limits, in several classes. So, there are costs to cutting the actual teachers that are in front of the students and bumping that ratio up, and we know we already have problems with that. My other thing is, it's a union versus non-union. I'm a little surprised there isn't more union representation here, advocating to cut the non-union positions versus the union positions. But I mean, in my opinion, that's a factor as well.
In terms of that, I did speak to both union presidents before we presented the first time, so they know what we're talking about. To your point also, a point well taken about class loads and all that, if we do, roll forward with reducing 2 elementaries, as in past years, it could be that kids come in all of a sudden in Ashton, and we're adding a grade 2 in July, unbudgeted. That happens. But right now, in the moment, we have to budget what we have. So that's what we're calling it tight, and we're cutting. In good years, we'd leave a teacher in the bank, because we're going to add one over July, that kind of thing. We don't have that luxury, so I took both right now.
Michelle?
I do have a question, kind of just going back to these object item numbers, this 56101. At the high school, it looks like there was a request for stools with backs to support longer class periods. Was that for, that's accounting for like this current budget that we're requesting, correct? That 61,000?
Yeah, I think that type of request really doesn't belong in supplies and materials. It's more of an equipment, so I cut that out and moved it to a different location.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would, I guess, say that is like, I'm not saying that any materials aren't important, but is that something that we can try to hold on to or not have to fulfill? Or is this kind of already?
No, I mean, all that stuff can be cut. You just have to remember. So basically, the standard for the district is like $28 a student, and it's been like that since before my time. And then the remainder of about $500,000 worth of that is curriculum related, the Great Mind, all those different things that are kind of ride dictated. So the remainder that falls out is not a ton of money. So you can cut that all day long and save $5,000, and you know it's not going to save some of those positions. There's just not enough meat there to be able to cut that down.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I would say in all those small lines, Tim and I did go through them before we brought the budget to you, and we took some money out, a couple $100K, I want to say, looking like 5 here, 10 here, 5 here. We can certainly do that again. If you want to comb through it and identify some for amendments, we can absolutely do that.
I know that you put together, Mr. McGrath, and I think Mr. Chandler as well, put together when contracts are up, right? So when we know that we're going to have to go out to bid and different things like that. Is it possible to add to that perhaps what the cost was for the last 3 years for each of those collective groups?
Anything's possible. It's just going to take some time. Yep.
Want some math help?
And it's not. It's just it's going in, pulling all the data, going into each vendor, pulling it all out, putting it together. It's going to take some time.
Right.
So.
I just think that this team here may be interested in knowing, because I know even this year in our fiscal, we saw a lot of increase in different things, and I know that you're negotiating as best you can, but like one of them we were surprised would go up like over 30%, but it hadn't been raised since 2015. So like when you look at things like that, we're getting hit everywhere. And I just think that knowing when these contracts are going to be going out for bid would help everyone as well to understand what those line items are and maybe why we're locked or not locked in what we're looking at from year on year, even if it's only from last year to this year, just so we could see it.
Also, I think someone asked me this, I can't recall who, but fund balance at the end of the year is still projected to be at 1.2 million. I wouldn't recommend it. You could still, if you wanted to tap that, you could, but right now we're below your policy already at less than 2%, but we're at 1.2 now.
I feel if we continue to go to the fund balance, long-term, we're going to put this district in a really bad place, and I don't want to sit here knowing it could get worse because of a decision we made, because we looked at that. So I would feel uncomfortable with that. I'm only one person on the committee, though.
I
feel like we-
agree. I agree with you. And the Auditor General has already told us that he likes what we have and to leave it where it is.
I mentioned last time, the Auditor General spoke to us before the last meeting, I tell you about that. So he was pleased to know we weren't using fund balance in this year's budget right now. So that was a conversation we had before the last meeting.
Mr. Bacon?
So, fund balance, we're not abiding by our policy right now. What do how long do we have to rectify that, to bring that back to meet policy?
To channel Mr. Adams, he would say, you're the school committee, you can violate your own policy if you want.
Yeah, we can't violate our own policy, so what is there?
You can change your policy.
I don't know if,
We should probably talk with Mr. Adams, maybe
so,
next.
yeah, and we can also look at what next year, not using fund balance, what does that, does it stay flat, or?
So in order to rectify that, you would have to then take some of your revenue out of this and force it into the as a surplus. So you would basically be cutting. You'd have to cut more to be able to reallocate to that fund balance. Is
We're-
how I would think in the short term you would fix it.
Yeah, and we're at 1.2, and what is that?
Estimated at this point, yeah. It depends. it says 3% of, so I think it's right, I think it's at 2%. I'd have to look at it again. It
Okay.
depends on what number, because the policy's not clear on what percentage of what revenues, and what expenses it is, so
Okay.
I have to look at that again.
Safe to say we're under.
Change the policy. We have talked about it, and Mr. Adams knows that too, and we've talked about it even with Mrs. Feather. We're not going to be able to change the policy or do any readjustments until we lock this budget in. Because then we're going to have the numbers that we know and what we're getting, and then we're going to have to look at changing our own policy.
Excuse me, any other questions? Dr. Thornton, just one quick thing. I did notice that at the last school committee meeting, you had 2 other positions on the slides,
Yeah,
but they weren't in the letter. I don't know.
That was my omission, apologies. Last time we talked around a retirement of a part-time clerk at the high school, and that is still in the other, I would call it. And we also had the greeter in the front was also on the list. So those 2 are still in the equation. My apologies not having them on the list.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So discussion and a vote to approve fiscal year 27 superintendent's proposed budget. We just went over the discussion and vote to approve fiscal year 27 school budget amendments. We do not necessarily have to take action today. We can wait till Thursday.
You could wait till Thursday. I think it's due to the town.
First Monday in April.
So next meeting is, so Thursday is the meeting.
Preferably if it was voted on this week, so I could package it up and get it to the town without.
Yeah, so, yeah, this Thursday, correct? Discussion or vote to approve fiscal year 27 superintendent's proposed budget. So no action as of now, and then it'll be on Thursday's meeting.
Right.
Public comment? No. Adjournment. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Bacon? Second by Ms. Shea and Ms. Smith. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes 6-0, and we adjourn at 6:09